Hello, welcome to the Manic Pixie Dream Vlog. I'm your host, Caroline Georges, and welcome. So, I wanted to talk about just past love, I guess, and just discuss or reminisce over life lessons I've learned from ex-boyfriends. I don't know. Like, is it ever really over once you have something with somebody, you know? Like, just that's the thing with my ex-boyfriends. It doesn't ever seem like... It always feels like there's some part of me that always stayed married to them, you know? And I had this ex, and I'm not going to say his name or anything like that, but I had this ex-boyfriend, and he was my first, like, real boyfriend. And I was 17 when I started dating him, and he was in his 20s, in his early 20s. And my sister, and I that was what was exciting about it at first, was that my sister hated him. My sister, he was my older stepbrother's friend's older brother, and and I don't know, I liked that the relationship made my sister angry. And she was in something about my sister felt protective of me when I started dating him, and and I remember I was really unsure about PDA at the time, and he was really into PDA, and I remember we went to the video store to rent movies, and he groped my butt, and I was just like I was scandalized. I was totally scandalized, and I don't know. It was just but then later on that night, I tried holding his hand, and he didn't want to hold my hand, and that was confusing. But we dated on and off for about a year, and so when we broke up for the final time, he was going to go to school, and he was leaving town, and so I wanted to surprise him with a threesome, and because that was the thing. The relationship was, it was all very appeasing. He was smart, and he was sexy, and he worked at a bar, and he, and at the time, those were things that I really valued in a man, and just the currency of being able to be the girl who's dating an older guy who works at a bar and who speaks French, and and it was all very I was in love with the idea of him. I think that was what it was, and just the idea of who this guy was to me and what he meant to me was worth doing things that I didn't want to do and pretending that I wanted to do them. And so I was like kicked out of bed. Like, my friend and him just went at it, and I was completely excluded. and I think that's kind of how threesomes work. But I mean, I was like 18 at the time, so I just, it was and then he took my dad's book. He borrowed this rare edition of Ulysses from my dad, and he didn't return it. And I was so betrayed, and I was so angry, and I was so bitter about that he, and I was supposed to see him one last time before he left town, and then he canceled, and he never got the book back to me, and I was really angry, and I was so bitter that he decided to leave everything on a negative note, and and so a couple of months ago, I got a friend request from him on Facebook, and he's a completely different person now. Like, he's like balding, like he has like a job where he it doesn't bartend anymore. He has like a real job now, and he has a girlfriend and stuff, and so he and I just we got on the phone. I immediately told him I wanted my dad's book back. He sent me my dad's book, and I sent it back to my dad, and I was able to get that closure of just being able to return my dad's book to him. Because I always felt really guilty that, you know, like, don't fuck with my dad. I just, you know, don't fuck with my dad's shit. You know, that was like kind of an extra low blow. And I always wondered what I did that he treated me badly. And he apologized for treating me badly and for taking advantage of me, I guess. And he always felt really guilty about it. But I always wondered why. Like, why at the time, you know, that the relationship was like that. And so he and I talked, and it was just weird. You know, it was just so weird that we're just different people. We're just totally different people. And then he invited me to go see this eclipse that you can see an eclipse from where he lives in Oregon. And I was kind of like, I don't know, like, dude, you have a girlfriend. Why are you inviting your ex-girlfriend to come, you know? And I don't know. It was just like a little splash of acid on my closure, you know, that he asked me to come visit him to see this eclipse. And, you know, maybe he had good intentions. Maybe he just wanted to see me, and maybe he just wanted to show me this eclipse, and maybe me and his girlfriend would become best friends. And, you know, that was a situation he envisioned, maybe, you know, benefit of the doubt. But I don't know, maybe people really never do change. Because, you know, he wanted an open relationship, and which I gave him, and you know, again, like, this relationship, he wrote the rules, and I just obeyed them because I wanted to be with him, and I wanted the protection of being in a relationship with him, and what that relationship did for me. It would, and so I was working at this coffee shop, and this woman, she bought like a bag of coffee beans or something like that. And she asked, it was around Christmas time, and she asked if we could gift wrap the coffee beans for her. And I said, no, we don't do that, but the store down the street does. They'll gift wrap the beans for you. And I don't know why, but I think at the time I thought, I think at the time I thought that if you paid this store, they would gift wrap things for you. You just had to pay for the gift wrapper, and I think that was their policy for a while. And so I knew that and recommended her this store where they would wrap gifts. And then the manager of the store called me later on that day and was irate with me, and she was just like, why are you telling people to come over here to wrap gifts? Like, that is just for customers that spend money here, like, blah blah blah. And she was just irate with me. And this woman was in her 40s, and this woman was you know, and it was weird. I felt yelled at. Like, I felt like I was being scolded by like a teacher, you know, by like or something, or like by a principal, you know. I felt, and I felt really embarrassed, and I felt really guilty. And then it turns out my ex-boyfriend, who we're talking about, he and her had a dalliance, and he ended it, and she knew that I was his girlfriend and stuff. And then she lashed out at me, and she apparently had like gone off on him at the bar and stuff while he was working and stuff. And there was this whole drama going on with her. And it was just weird. Like, it was just because I was 18, and I was sharing a man with a woman that was in her 40s. And that was so weird to me. That was so bizarre to me. That I was in just this conflict with this woman, and we were like kind of I was in a position where like we were a man was standing in between us. You know, and that was so weird to me. But, you know, I could have gotten married once, and I had this, I've talked about him a little bit, but I had this client who, was madly in love with me, and I don't know. I didn't really, I honestly, like, even if a client is good looking and stuff, like, I don't really see him any differently than I would see a client that wasn't good looking. But he was one of my, but still, like, it was, I just saw him as a client, you know what I mean? Even though he was young and even though he was good looking, I just saw him as a client. And he, you know, he was in a really bad place, and he was an alcoholic. It was so bad. It was so bad. He would come to the club. Once he came to the club to see me, and he and I, like, you know, we had VIPs together and stuff, and he, the next day, he and I were texting, and he said that he didn't remember coming in and spending money. That was how bad it was. And I took advantage of how bad it was. You know, I made a living off of how bad it was. And I don't know, I always just sort of felt, because I loved him, you know, I loved him as a person, and I felt for him as a person, and I cared about him as a person. And but then it became, we were friends, and he didn't want to see me at the club anymore, and he just wanted to give me money directly, and it was like that for a few months. And then he did something nice for me. He did a favor for me. He just, I was in a situation, and he stepped in and just fixed my problem for me. And just having somebody do that for me, having somebody just do a simple favor for me, and, you know, just get me out of a bad situation, just kind of made me fall in love with him a little bit. And it's like, it was just like, okay, you know what? I could marry this guy. I could see how this works. This is how it works. This is how it is. This is a relationship. And, but, you know, his drinking problem was just so bad. And, so he wanted to move in together. He wanted to live together. And, so we tried it for a few days, and, you know, it didn't work out. And, but then he messaged me on Facebook, you know, and he's just like, I'm getting married. I found somebody, and he and I talked one last time, and he just told me thank you for, you know, just the time that we spent together, and I love you, and it was beautiful. It was really just, it was just beautiful. It was truly a really beautiful moment of having closure and of letting somebody go. And I miss him a lot. And yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I just, I didn't really love him. You know, I didn't really, really love him. And, you know, and he found somebody that really loves him. And that led, and just realizing that that person couldn't be me sort of hurt a little bit, but it was still love, you know what I mean? And something came out of you know, where I work, you know, that created something very loving and something pretty good, you know. It just wasn't right. He wasn't the one, you know. And I want credit for that. I want credit, because I feel like all I've ever wanted out of life was a rich husband, and I had the chance to have that. And because it wasn't right, and because he wasn't the one, I chose not to marry the wrong person. I chose not to be with the wrong person. And but I was in my hometown. I worked at this daycare, and I started dating this kid that worked in the area. And well, actually, how we met was he stood up for me. I was invited to a bachelor party as a joke, and I almost went. I got like an Evite for this barbecue I wasn't, nothing about the Evite said that the only people that went to this were going to this barbecue were going to be men. And I got invited to this, and I was the only girl that got invited to this. And my ex, he stepped in and he made sure that I knew, hey, just so you know, this is a bachelor party and there's only going to be guys there. And I was like, no, I had no idea. And he stood up for me, and he stood up to his friends for me. And that was amazing. Like, that was just having somebody stand up for me was just amazing. And so we would babysit this boy that worked at the daycare, that went to the daycare. This boy, he was in foster care, and he was a special case. So I volunteered to babysit him on weekends for his foster family, and I would bring this guy with me to, and we would go on dates, and we would bring this little kid with us, and the little boy asked us to adopt him, and and I just saw, like, that could be my life. I could marry this guy, this great guy who does the right thing, who stands up for me, and I could adopt this kid and do this noble thing, and live my life being the parent to this little boy. And I didn't. And I broke up with him for a little while. We got back together, and I started dating somebody else, and I felt. And then the guy I was dating, he was the dad of one of the daughters. His daughter was one of the girls that went to the daycare I worked at. And so the little boy saw me and the dad together, and was confused. And he, asked me, he's like, where's Caleb? And I was just like, oh, I Caleb and I haven't seen each other in a little while, and I, that was the conversation. And, I don't know if I want to adopt kids. I just always felt like that's something I should do. I want to adopt. I think people should adopt kids. I think there's so many really great kids. There's so many, that's the thing that people don't realize, is that, like, these orphan children, they're not, damaged goods. They're great kids. This was a great kid who didn't have a family, who didn't have parents. And he deserved better than me as a mom, you know what I mean? But I felt like I owed that to him, and I didn't give that little boy what I owed him and what I owed to the world. And so adopt kids. Adopt. It's so important, and it's so important to give children homes. Anyways, that's a little bit about my lost loves. And have a lovely day. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like my story, if you like my message, if you like my point of view on things, and my sense of humor. Please share my videos on any account that you have. Just share. That'd be great. Have a lovely day. Bye.